Thank you, Councillor Thurston. We have apologies. We've got apologies from Councillor Ron Scott and Councillor Toi Iti, and we have Councillor McDonald, hopefully, on Zoom, together with Councillor Titaru White. I'll move that those apologies be received. And Councillor Campbell, sorry, is an apology. I'll move the apologies be received. Councillor Crosby, all those in favour say aye. Against, carried. Thank you. There's no public forum. There's items not on the agenda. There are none. The order of business, there's no change to that. Declaration of conflict of interest. I don't believe there are any. Reports. Mr. Taylor.
I'll hand over to Mike Seaborn if that's okay, Mr. Chairman.
Hi everyone. Just wanted to start off the meeting by pointing out a mistake. In the recommendations, we've put the date of 2003 for the B card application. We don't want to apply it to the last 20 years, so the date should be to 2023. So apologies for that. Okay, so as you well know, and from the reading of the report, there's been a government policy announcement around fares. The report covers the hopefully some of the dimensions of the implications of what that means for the toi moana. Particularly around the 13 to 18-year-old age group. I think there are two key points of discussion that council will need to think about and to have a discussion around, and also the idea around cash and whether we collect cash as a point of discussion. Just to go through it very, very quickly, we're recommending option 1. Which is alignment with government policy. The strength of that option comes from its consistency of its ability to operationalise. We have both our own ticketing system that we belong to and operate with the regional consortia. It's called RITS. That to operationalise this by July 1 makes it it's an easier process when we apply it to the through that system, and also with the NTS, or the National Ticketing System. We are able to remain consistent with that. So just from an operational perspective, simplicity and consistency makes it much more easy to implement. As you can see from the report, the financial implications are generally we are positive for both options. What this allows us to do, though, is to claim a subsidy from Waka Kotahi in both options, but more on option 1. In order to offset the cost of those fares. Those subsidies come into our revenue stream in the order and magnitude that's explained in the report. Just lastly, in terms of the other delivery considerations, I think it's important to note that our suppliers are really key in this. Age verification at the driver is not something that we desire. We're already having some issues around concerns with criminal activity in the buses and around them, and so one of the dimensions that we still need to talk to our suppliers around is how do we keep our people safe, and that really just goes to that cash question, as you'd imagine. So those are sort of the main things that I wanted to get across in the first instance, and happy to take the rest of the report as read and open up for questions.
Thank you, Mr. Seaborn. Councillor Nees.
Mr. Chair, I just want to signal early that I'm going to be proposing option 2. My main reason for doing that is I do not want to reduce levels of service to 13 and to 18-year-olds. I think we've made amazing gains getting more traction with our public transport network across the region with that group, and I really do not want to see that go backwards. There are a number of other reasons, but I just want to signal that early, please.
And I'd like to signal early on that I'm going to support option 2 as well for a variety of reasons.
So thank you, Councillor Nees. Councillor Thompson, in making those announcements, you want to reserve your position in terms of making that formal declaration. Thank you. In terms of, we've heard from staff. Could I ask Councillor Von Duddleston, as Chair of Public Transport Committee, to provide his advice to councillors?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Along with yourself and the CEO, the three of us were on a meeting last week with Minister Wood with regard to this issue, and there was widespread support throughout all the regional councils to support this as an integrated approach and try to be proactive in helping facilitate it. I think if we go for option 2, my concern, my personal concern is we make ourselves an outlier, and yes, we've had a trial running actually initially since 2020 for free public transport. We brought in the regions, Whakatane and Rotorua in 2022. The option 1 gives added support to the 5 to 12-year-olds. They were only getting travel before going to and from school, and I think this is the age group that we most want to support. If we can get those young people supported to go to school, and then also to use public transport from a young age, I think we'll get our biggest benefit. That the 13 to 25-year-olds, and we were never supporting past school prior to that, so it was only up to a maximum of 18, I think. They were only getting that service to and from school, and this will give them actually half-price travel 24 hours. So they actually overall probably aren't they're probably pretty neutral on it. I would like to move the recommendation of staff and for option 1. So I would like to officially move that as the thing. And the other point, and it's not in the recommendations, is the cashless buses. And the question of security came up at the meeting with Minister Wood, and he was cognizant of that it is a real issue. And this fare box theft is causing a substantial problem for our drivers and putting them at risk. Noting that Auckland, our biggest city, does not have any cash in their bus system, and they've been on a ticketing scheme separate to ours, but on a ticketing scheme for many years, and have actually gone away from cash completely. And so I think that's the sooner we can get to that, and I think with RITS we will be able to get to that relatively quickly. That will help improve the safety. The other issue that I want you to think about, we've got a huge cost in public transport, targeted rate 100%, so your ratepayers are paying, and we've got big ambitions for Tauranga in particular of on-demand buses, and which we've agreed to in the annual plan, but also there's a plan for the first trial with Park and Ride, and these things cost a lot of money, and we will get some savings here, but I'm sure in the end we will need savings to if we're going to achieve our ambition on the other things. The Park and Ride, I haven't seen the final costings yet, but it's upwards of $1 million to actually, even in a trial basis, to do that. And I would support, and staff are keen on that as well, and they're working through a business case on that, the first one of those. And so I think we've got to be circumspect of how we spend our money. So would like to move option 1.
Thank you, Councillor Volundarelson. You have moved it. Do we have a seconder? Councillor, thank you. It's been seconded. It's now open for discussion. Councillor McMillan and then Crosby, did I say? Okay, Councillor McMillan.
Nice sales pitch, but for me, my values can't go with option one because I'm thinking about our teenagers. You know, it's for parents, it's the most expensive time when you've got teenagers. They eat a lot, they move around a lot, they go to sports, and if you've got teenagers, you may just be tempted to now jump in the car rather than tot up your half price fares. So for me, I like the simplicity of anyone, you know, school age gets to ride for free. And so I'll be going for option two.
Thank you, Councillor McMillan. So before I come to Councillor Shirley to speak to the second, Councillor Crosby had a question.
Thank you, Mike. Just on the verification, if I've read it correct, is the B card in the short term will be the verification vehicle?
Correct.
But everybody has a B card at the moment, so.
That's correct. So the B card usage is around about 70%. And part of this proposal, which is something that we'll be doing through the refresh anyway, is to increase the use of B card right across the system so that we can prepare ourselves to be ready for the national ticketing system in future.
Councillor Nees, you had a question?
Yes, my question is about the tertiary free trial that we've got at the moment. Your paper was silent on that. So what does your option one mean for our free travel for tertiary students?
In terms of the tertiary trial, we'll be implementing the government structure as it reads exactly. So we'd be working with our tertiary services that go between the regions to apply the concession to the B card, and then the remaining cash passengers would end up paying full price.
So we did consult on that. And I'm very concerned that we're backing away from a position that we actually consulted on and agreed upon. And it is has been a negotiated and discussed arrangement with the tertiary providers. So it is, at the very least, I think we should be continuing that. And if we're doing that, then in all conscience, I cannot support that we are charging 13 to 18-year-olds half price fares. So,
Councillor Nees, can I just give you some guidance that if you give an indication that you want to move a particular option, can I suggest that you reserve your commentary as opposed to a question to when you want to take that option?
when I spoke, I actually did intend that to be a motion, and Councillor von Dadelsson actually came in and pushed me out of the line, which is a bit unfortunate, Mr. Chair.
Okay, I'll come back to you. Councillor Shirley, you second the motion, your opportunity to speak to it.
I strongly support the staff's recommendation and the motion moved by Councillor Dadelsson. I think it's overwhelmingly makes more sense than the others. It's the simplicity of it is important, the consistency of it with government policy and what other regions will inevitably do. And I think we risk seriously muddying the waters and getting into a real confused system if we start playing around with that. There are a few points of clarification, though, that I would like to seek in speaking to it. And as I understand the half price policy, it was temporary. It was to end on the 30th of June this month, in fact. But the other one is the comment in 2.41 of the report, where it reads, in addition to recent patronage trends have lifted significantly across the region, and staff expect that the half price fares policy have assisted in this. I take it that's meant to be suspect rather than expect, because it doesn't make sense reading as you expect that. I'd really like to see what is the evidence, because the trial started on the 27th of January 2020, so it's been confused with COVID. And I'd just like to see what data do we have in terms of any uplift in patronage and the age cohorts with that. Do we have that granularity in the data to determine whether it was that age cohort that actually contributed to the increased patronage, or was it across the board in general?
Through you, Mr. Chair, just we don't have the data on that particular age group because we don't collect that at the moment. This new fares policy establishes a new age grouping. However, we do have patronage information, and we've had quite a bit of an uptick in the last quarter around patronage. And at the PTC meeting, we did discuss some of the reasons for that. So in terms of fares policy and how fares affect patronage, it's inelastic. So basically, fares themselves don't create a total sum patronage change, but they are part of a suite of things that have an effect. So in terms of that, we get more patronage when the prices for travel are lower on our public transport system than, say, fuel price and other things like that. So what it does, it brings in other externalities around what actually changes the demand for travel. So that's one of those things. The other aspect to it is our quality of service, how often we are turning up, the reliability and all those other attributes. So all of those in tandem help us to increase our patronage. So fares does have an effect. I do say that as a suspect instead of expect in terms of that particular sentence. But at the same time, we went through a time of a kind of an extraordinary circumstance, and that's when those sorts of calculations do wobble a bit. And so from our perspective, free fares and its application at the time helped us to turn the corner, but it is something that doesn't sustain. From our perspective, the reliability and other externalities, including the infrastructure that we've got, how efficient and reliable our services are the main ways that we can increase patronage.
Thanks for that explanation. Just in concluding my comments as seconder, I just reiterate, I think it's so much simpler, so much more consistent, and I would urge fellow councillors, to me, it's the only one that makes sense.
Thank you, Councillor Shirley. Councillor Thurston.
Chairman, I tend to sympathise with Councillor Nees. I don't know what the process is that you're going to go through, but are you going to put Councillor Von Dadelson's motion first, and if it fails, you'll put up Councillor Nees? Can you just give us some guidance here? But in terms of option 2, I've watched patronage climb. I think the word to use would be dramatically in recent times, particularly in Rotorua. And I attribute that to the trial that we've been undertaking. And I think there's a credibility issue here if we backtrack in any form. And so I will be supporting option 2, which I believe is a win-win.
Councillors, any other questions? Councillor Crosby.
Mike, again, in relation to recommendation 1B, that the fare structure applies to B card holders 1st of July, what happens to those that aren't B card holders 1st of July?
Anyone who's not a B card holder and pays cash will pay full price under this current proposal.
Through you, Chair, where was the notion of a cashless? How does the cashless idea fall into these set of recommendations? It seems it doesn't.
In terms of the cashless principle, is one of the issues for our operators is the more they collect cash, the more they have security concerns, and there's been an uptick in those sorts of incidents. What we would be looking for is a drive to push, this is one of the incentives, to push the B card and reduce that 30% significantly. So this is a way of us getting towards cash or cashless. But we do have some operational considerations, particularly with our services out in the east and into our smaller communities, which don't have the machines. So we really need to work with those operators and communities to make sure that we're not taking away an option that sustains that service completely. So we're looking for a direction and for us to move in that direction, but at the same time, we need some time to operationalise that.
Councillor Winters.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman. If we vote for option 2, can you give me a surety that it can be implemented by 1 July this year?
For you, Mr. Chair, we can operationalise both options. Option 1 is easier. Option 2 can be done, involves more manual workarounds and administratively more burdensome. More time and effort, more paper, more counting.
So it can be done? Yes is the answer.
Councillor White.
Yes, Mr. Chair. I'm pleased to have reserved my comments to the end because I just wanted to listen to the commentary on either options 1 or 2 from my colleagues because I was sort of wavering either or. And listening to it and listening to my colleague Councillor Thurston around the patronage and Otaru has climbed. And, you know, that particular community has a particular type of demographic that worries me a little bit. If they're used to what's there, they'll go with it. If you start, for example, the B cards, I would argue that a lot of Māori from home don't have B cards. I'll be surprised if they do. And if they're going to be charged full price or they have to produce a B card and they don't have one, I would be more afraid for the drivers than anything else. I think that there is, and particularly given the time frame, very tight time frame, I can see some pretty hostile customers coming on board, which doesn't make a good company for the drivers, to be frank. So I'm leaning to option 2, listening to the discussion that's here, and support of my colleague Councillor Thurston and Jane Nice. I'll be moving forward supporting option 2.
Thank you, Councillor White. Councillor Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In speaking in support of option 2, I've got several points. The first point Councillor Shirley made, or one of his points, was that if we go with anything other than option 1, we're muddying the water. But with the greatest of respect, we currently have a significant number of 13 to 18-year-olds, their caregivers, who are all used to a system. And to think that that's going to get changed on them virtually overnight is, in my view, muddying the water considerably. However, that's not my main point. My main point, as the report outlines very clearly, is that the position we've arrived at, particularly with free fares at peak times for 13 to 18-year-olds, has been the result of 2 very significant public consultation processes. And if you don't think our credibility is on the line over that, then I'm sorry, I would have to disagree with you. Those have been very robust and rigorous consultation processes, and I have to say the debate and discussion around this table in terms of the decision-making has also been incredibly rigorous and robust. So for me, there's a real credibility issue, not the least of which is what Councillor McMillan has said, which is encouraging parents in these very, very stressful financial times to be able to have their children transported safely around the sub-region. I think the recent patronage data at the PT committee spoke for itself, irrespective of the fact that it wasn't perhaps the granular quality that Councillor Shirley sought, but to me it reflected that the trials, particularly for our younger people, have been a roaring success. So for me, I'm not prepared to go anything less than the current system, which is obviously 13 to 18-year-olds, but I certainly support Councillor Nee's option going with option 2. As far as I'm concerned in relation to the B card, I think ultimately it's an admirable position, but it needs very wise transition because I think there will be all sorts of issues associated with that. So rather than a hard and fast date, I'd like to see a measured and prudent transition take place. I think that's enough at the time being. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Thompson. So what I propose to do is procedurally try and deal with this. So Councillor Nees has already given notice in terms of a position that she's got. I need to give Councillor Von Duddleston the right of reply to speaking to this motion.
Yes, I would just remind everybody that we started this trial in Tauranga in 2000. These trials are meant to be for a year. NZTA do not support us in this trial, so we have a real issue going. It won't be a trial, but we won't have NZTA support is the issue. The other, so the transition, I totally agree with Councillor Thompson that we do need to take care in the transition to go to a cashless, and I don't expect that and it's not in the motion at all, I don't expect that to come into effect on day one, but it's something that I think there's enough evidence around the country that it can and will work. I just remind people that the likes of Hamilton, the Waikato Regional Council, there is no, they do not operate any separate school bus system. We had a problem when we first took over the school buses, and because it was such a dog's breakfast, we decided to actually put some school bus services on ourselves, which was an expensive operation for this council. Auckland and Hamilton at least do not, and I don't think Christchurch does either, have a school service separate. And, you know, so we've got a gold-plated system that is putting, you worry about putting a pressure on parents. If you, with a targeted rate, what you're proposing is going to put pressure on parents, all right, because it's across everybody and it is substantial. So that's an issue. There was one last point I had.
Point of order, Mr. Chairman, would you accept a point of order?
Yes, councillor Thompson.
I'd like clarification on the financial consequences of the targeted rate for option 2 in dollar terms.
Councillor Thompson, it's outlined on page 7.
So
Mr. Von Duddleston, have you finished?
Oh, I'm just getting that breather to try and think, but I had one other point and I can't think what it was. So no, that's I am absolutely adamant that is the option 1 is the right option for this council.
Councillor Shirley.
Just as a supplementary to Councillor Thompson's point of clarification, if we're going to do that assessment of the costing, could we also add to that the extra costing of staff time and resource for a more complicated system and the administration costs that go with that, because all of that ends up on the ratepayers too. And just reminding everyone, we talk about free fares. Nothing's free. It's a question of how you pay for it, when you pay, and who pays.
Thank you, Councillor Shirley. Again, I would remind you that bullet point 4 on the financial analysis outlines that concern that you've just expressed. Councillor Crosby.
Thank you. I think it's an important point that Councillor Von Duddleston raised to Mike, a question or clarification around the endless trial that's been going at considerable cost, and what would the NZTA's position be moving forward, and any subsidy in relation to the endless trial that's been going on? Would it stop?
Through you, Mr. Chair, the position would remain unchanged. More than likely in that they won't fund free peak services for some of the reasons I outlined earlier around patronage, and it's unlikely that we've got any signals that would change at all.
Okay, thank you.
Right, councillors, I intend motions in terms of adopting option 1 has been moved by Councillor Von Duddleston. It's been seconded by Councillor Shirley. Because Councillor Nees has given me an indication that she supports the other option, and it's been supported by Councillor Thompson, it's a direct negative, so I don't believe I can take an amendment to it. So we will vote on the motion that's been moved and seconded, and in doing that, I want to do it by a show of hands. So I'd ask all those in favour of the motion, raise your hand. Councillor White, McDonald.
No, I'm
entitled to
not,
vote, even though you're entitled to vote, even though you're on Zoom.
Yep, no, my hand's down.
Councillor McDonald, you aware of what we're doing? Thank you. Right, those against? The motion is lost. Councillor Nees.
Mr. Chair, I move that we adopt option 2. My reasons for that is, one, we have consulted with the community and they supported us. Two, government has changed their position. You can't argue with me on that. They have changed their position to accept that free fares is actually making a difference in getting young people onto public transport. So I'm not as convinced as Mr. Seaborn is that, in fact, the government position will remain unchanged for that small portion of our service that we are providing half price fares additional for the 13 to 18-year-olds. I do not want to risk some reputational backlash for our council, who have consulted, have been providing free fares for 13 to 18-year-olds, and now would be taking away a service that they grew to value and which has proven to be very advantageous in getting people on the buses. I also don't want to be going backwards with regard to congestion, because I can guarantee that those 13 to 18-year-olds will find some alternative way to go rather than on the bus, rather than pay half price fares. So that is my reason, Mr. Chair, for moving option 2. I also would like a soft transition, if possible, to help people get the B card as soon as possible and as feasible. So I have got an option, a suggested recommendation that we direct staff to transition to the new fare structure to the B card holders with operators by encouraging and incentivising the use of the B card. So whether or not it's something that staff can do to make it easy for people to pick up B cards, I think that would be the way forward. So that is my my motion, Mr. Chair.
I will second.
Thank you, Councillor Nees. Do we have a seconder? Councillor Thompson. Thank you. By way of clarification, Mr. Seaborn, in receiving the recommendation, how does that apply in terms of 2B, which we would need to reword?
So to be, I think the recommendation itself can stand. I think the clarification we need around is the application of concession to cash or just B card. And I think the transitional wording in the recommendation helps us to do that. So I think we have to take that as our guidance.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There is one further point, and that's about the tertiary free service that we provide at the moment. The recommendations are silent on that. I'm not aware of the tagging of the tertiary free trial to age groups, and I'll seek some guidance from Mr. Seaborn on that, pending perhaps a further recommendation, Mr. Chair.
Seaborn.
For you, Mr. Chair, in terms of the tertiary concession, the community services card also provides another concession, and we are funded for those tertiary services directly from Waka Kotahi, and so we follow their guidance on this. So the Waka Kotahi hasn't yet normalised its guidance with the government policy announcement, so we'll have to follow it in step with them around how we apply it. So from our perspective, we'll have another concession to add the 24 plus students and to retain what is current policy. So we'll go in step with Waka Kotahi's recommendation on that.
Not quite sure what that means. Are we going to be retaining the tertiary trial for the rest of the period?
Yes.
Thank you. Could we have that clarified in the recommendation, please?
Sorry.
How do you want to?
Yes, through you, Chair. So I understand the resolution that you're seeking is direct staff to implement the change by 1 July 2023, as outlined in the report, and A is option 2, which is to retain free fares for 13 to 18-year-olds and the tertiary service trial. And B is confirms the new fare structure transitions to B card holders, with operators encouraging, incentivising the use of the B card. I think that is what you were seeking, Councillor Nees.
Councillor Thompson, happy? That changed wording. Any other discussion, councillors? Councillor
Can I
McMillan?
just ask a question? So can they, if they get on the bus, can they get an application for a B card right there and then on the bus currently?
Not currently, but that's the kind of measure that we'd be looking at to increase use, particularly targeting people who are using cash right now.
Nothing else, councillors? If not, you are clear. So the resolution, resolution's been moved and seconded, moved by Councillor Nees, seconded by Councillor Thompson. The order of it has been read out by the Chief Executive. All those in favour, raise your hand. Against?
All for a division, Chairman.
All for a division.
Thank you.
All those for. So we've got Nees, McMillan, McDonald, White, Thurston, Winters and Thompson. Against? Leader, Crosby, Shirley and Von Duddleson. I declare it carried. Thank you, councillors. That's that. Consideration of items not on the agenda. There are none. I therefore declare the hui closed. Thank you, councillors.